Welcome to Slackin' Off with Brady Slack.
Welcome to Slackin' Off. I'm your host, Brady Slack. You're quickly going to learn that myself and the guests on this podcast do everything but slack off. Today, I've got a really good friend. He's become a really good friend. I got asked to speak at a mastermind about a year ago, and when I got to the mastermind, I didn't really know too many people there, and through some mutual connections, I met Hailame, and we kind of got acquainted fairly quick. But at this mastermind, a lot of the people at this mastermind were in real estate. And funny enough, Hailame wasn't as heavily into real estate as he is now. So Hailame, without further introduction, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, kind of where you come from, and we'll kind of dive into what you do right now.
Slack money, bro. Dude, I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. So yeah, it's funny because our relationship, I feel like, has been like parallel to my business. Like as the
Yeah.
business has grown, like I've become better and better friends with you, which
Yeah.
is funny. It's saying something, right? If you want to make money and grow, Brady's your
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. No. Thank
But
you.
that mastermind, that's where it all started. So yeah, I think,
Yeah.
that's where we were acquainted. That was about a year ago to almost to
Yeah.
date. And yeah, at the time I was in door-to-door sales. That's my background. I was with Vivint for 7 years doing direct-to-home sales for security and solar,
Yep.
primarily security. And yeah, I wasn't in real estate as heavily as I am now. At the time, I was just doing short-term rentals, Airbnbs, just on my own personal stuff. But it wasn't until really that mastermind that I kind of decided to just kind of send it and jump all in. And I think from January to March of last year, there was a lot of mindset shifts for me in terms of
Hmm.
deciding, hey, do I want to take this step? And I kind of started dabbling in it. And then March is kind of when I went all in with what is now Elk Ridge Management. And fast forward to today, and we're we've built a portfolio of about 80 plus. We've purchased 20 plus stores in the last 10 weeks. So it's
Yeah.
been
I was
awesome.
gonna say 2 months.
Yeah. So
That's
it's been
that's
incredible.
cool. I I a while ago I was talking with another client of mine, and they were so it was funny because he was complaining, and he was so sick and tired of reading all of these self-help books, and all of these kind of life lesson books, and they're great books, the 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson and Think and Grow Rich, and like they're really good books if you haven't read them. But he's like, I'm so sick and tired of reading these books because they all say the same thing: work hard, be kind, do your best, get up early, like. And he's like, what I really want to dive into is not what the people do, but why they do that, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to set the tone. First off, why sales? How did you get into sales, and what lessons did you learn while you were in sales that helped you get to the point with where you're at? Because again, like I said, when we talked about a year ago, when I first met you, it was sales, 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 and I look at that because I deal with a lot of sales guys, and that was a great multiple six-figure income. Like I mean, it was easy at that point. You were managing teams, you were getting overrides. So what happened? What lessons did you learn during your sales term that kind of carried over into what you're doing now? And then we can dive into the successes that you've had in the last really 10 months.
Yeah. Man, that's a great question. Sales initially for me, because my background is my father's a physician. He's actually one of the very first Tongan, full-blooded Tongans to ever get an MD out of America. So that's
Dude,
pretty
he's a
cool.
baller. He's awesome.
Yeah, no, he's a stud, and so he's a humble guy. I learned a lot growing up from him of kind of just taking risks on opportunities that are foreign to you, right? My grandparents were immigrants, and so from going from immigrant grandparents to my dad being first generation physician, that's huge. And that kind of was like I bring that up because that's important in like my mindset. When I got back from my LDS mission in 2013, I was going into school with the intent to become a physician, And long story short, I was approached by a friend of mine that I'd served my mission with, and he introduced me to sales. And he was like, "Hey, I know you're going to be a doctor, but you should come and sell with us, because you'll
Try
be able
it.
to make you'll be able to make some money. You can focus on being a doctor." And the big thing for me was like, there's another thing to add to the resume list, right?
Sure.
And so that was really the first introduction to sales for me. And so kind of condensing the story, first summer I went out, I made 40 grand. The second summer I went out, made 75. And then by the third summer, which was my junior year of college, I made my first six figures. And mind you, these are all during summer. Like these are just
Yeah.
direct
Four
college
months. 4 months.
months, right? And so I remember thinking, like, holy cow, like this is like an amazing opportunity. Like, and I looked at my
Yeah.
dad and I was like, here he is, he's been practicing 10 years plus, and he's still paying off his debt from medical school,
hmm
right? And here
Probably
I was.
making probably making similar amounts of money at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's where, because I saw some of my regionals who were making more than my dad, right? And they'd been in the
Yeah.
industry less than my dad was in school by a mile, right? And so I kind of started to do the math. But the one thing that really drew me to sales, and this answers your question that you'd asked me, was like what I had found was that by going out and learning how to communicate, learning how to negotiate, learning how to have emotional intelligence in a different way and listen, right? These are all things that you learn and develop when you're doing sales. I found that every other faucet in my life actually got better, right? Because I was, dude, in high school, I always used to, and maybe I was a bully. I used to think student government was the dumbest thing ever. Like I used to
You were a
think like
jock.
that
Just admit it. You were a jock.
I was a jock. I really was, right? Football was my life, right? And like I just would see the kids in student government. I'm like, yeah, I would never be friends with you, right? And that's a terrible mindset, right?
Sure.
But in sales, for whatever reason, like I started to develop and see the value of like these interpersonal skills, right? Because
Mm,
I started to see how my communication with teachers, how I could get more of what I wanted easily, right? My
yeah.
relationship with my wife, with my friends. And so in college, like around my sophomore year, and I attribute it to sales, I actually like started to go out for offices, right? And then by my senior year or my junior year at Weber State, I was, an elected student official, right? And that paid for,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that paid for, a lot of my stuff, paid for everything. And that kind of opened the door to me seeing like what is real value, right? And this all comes back to sales because at the highest level, sales in its essence is relationships.
Yeah.
And when you can develop that skill set, it will serve you well in whatever capacity. And that
Yeah.
laid the foundation for me to really build what is now Elk Ridge Management, right? And so
That's
sales is, I always tell people, that is the single best investment that any entrepreneur, any business owner can do for themselves
yeah.
because it is the core of every business, right?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I look at my industry, and one of the biggest complaints that I get from people about my industry, accounting and tax professionals, is that there's not enough communication. And I wish I was perfect at this as well. Me and my company, we strive to have 24 to 48 hour response times, and we could be better. We're definitely not perfect, but I think that's one thing that sets me apart from other people in my industry is my ability to communicate. I'm not your atypical accountant, and I do enjoy kind of that conversation setting. And I learned a while back that hard skills will get you a job and soft skills will get you promoted. And in
Hmm.
your situation, I can definitely see that hard skill potentially being the sales aspect. And then what came from that sales aspect, the communication, maybe the confidence, the relationship building. That's what opened these other doors that have gotten you to where you're at today, right?
Absolutely. And it's
That's,
significantly more valuable than any hard skill, right?
yeah.
By a mile. So, yep, absolutely.
So taking the sales skill set, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm sure some of the listeners would be curious to see how has that translated into real estate. Now, Elk Ridge Management, again, like I said, it's been fun to watch everything grow. You and I have a little side bet here where you're going to be paying for a steak dinner in the next couple of weeks, so I'm excited for that. Lame closed, what was it, 16 deals in 1 month.
Yeah.
In a period of
Wow.
about 27 days, Lame closed 16 creative finance deals, which is, again, mind you, he wasn't doing real estate full time until about April, give or
Yeah.
take, right?
Yep.
So so from going to doing nothing to closing 15 deals, there's got to be an element of sales in there that helped you out. Tell me a little bit
Ab-
about that.
Absolutely. And I attribute it wholly to sales, honestly, to relationships, just because, people don't think about this, but real estate is a very emotionally attached industry, right? People are attached to their homes emotionally.
Sure.
Right. And so the most effective people, in my experience, and my rise to success in this industry has been directly correlated to my ability to emotionally connect with people and then to talk them through different processes of how to acquire. Right. So it's been really serious two things. One, understanding that in real estate that it's an emotional beast, right? And if you can
Yeah.
get very good at connecting with sellers, you will be successful. But then two, what I didn't plan on and what I got kind of lucky with was the market, right? Because the market, as we know, real estate,
Mm,
right? Real estate
yeah.
tanked, and so especially here in Utah, like we've had it for years, overpriced real estate, and
Sure.
now it is no longer a seller's market; it is a buyer's market, right?
Yeah.
Properties over the last 6 months have quadrupled in inventory being available, right? And they're staying on market for months at a time. And so what
Yeah.
you're seeing now is a shift of motivated sellers, right? And so when you can understand what your market is right now and understand that there's a lot of emotion attached to it with these sellers, really what I was able to figure out was, okay, given the state of the market, how can I buy houses to my advantage given where the market is now? And once I understood how to do that, then it was just a matter of, okay, now that I understand this, how do I actually execute on that? How do I convince these people to allow me to purchase it this way? Right. And so and the hardest piece out of all of that is really, again, it's the hard skills of knowing how to do the creative finance. And then it's
Yeah.
the soft skills of being able to communicate and to offer a deal that makes sense and explain it and build a relationship. Which one's more valuable? By far the soft skills, the ability to
Yeah.
be able to connect and get them to a point where they're willing to let me purchase it creatively. So
That's
that's what
cool.
I would say, how it's all connected and how I've gotten my success up to this point. So
Awesome. No, that's good insight. Tell us a little bit about your month of December. Again, like that was a fun month for me to see for you because you'd repurposed a lot of properties. You brought on a lot of money through various partnerships that you'd created. Again, relationship based partnerships that you'd created. Um, Tell us a little bit about December, how those relationships came about, how you were able to close on that amount of properties. And then on the back end, tell us why you're going to owe me dinner here in a couple of weeks. Because we talked a little bit about that too.
yeah, that's funny. So yeah, December was awesome. It was the best month by far for my company, and a lot of it was because of quarter four, right? People are trying to essentially deploy money to be able to have better tax returns, right?
No
And
one
that's
wants
something
to pay Uncle Sam.
exactly right. And the number one way, at least in my opinion, the number one way to put your money where to put your money and to pay less taxes is real estate, right? And
Yeah.
so the month of December was huge because I was able to develop a lot of relationships. And again, it comes back to like sales, it comes back to relationships, right? That was the core, like that was the key piece in all of this. I come from a door to door industry that a lot of people don't know is extremely lucrative. There's a ton of money in it, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of my relationships with a lot of these door to door guys that I had previously worked with um, really benefited me in the sense that like I was now figuring out how to buy creatively, which is significantly less money down than traditional, while still getting the full tax benefit,
Hmm.
right? And when I figured that out and was able to, you know, essentially leverage my network and be able to share with people like, hey, this is how you get less taxes, that took off for me, right? And so we were able to purchase, and to be honest, sometimes I forget the number. I think it was 18. 18 doors is what we acquired in the month of December, all creatively, 100% creatively. And I was the middleman in these transactions where I would find the money through my network via relationships. I understood how to essentially deploy the money, and I cut myself in on those services and in the equity and in commissions. And then at the end of it, there would be an asset that was owned or co-owned by me or one of my clients, and it was a short-term rental because that's what we specialize in, is a short-term rental. And to
Cool.
be honest, I kind of reverse engineered all this without knowing it, because what I figured out
Yeah.
first was short-term rentals. That was like what I figured out first and foremost.
Yeah. And you got
And
and you
honestly,
got really good at short-term rentals.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you got really good because apart from an investing aspect, you started to manage
yep,
short-term rentals, and you got really good at managing short-term rentals. Again, taking that reverse engineering into consideration.
absolutely. And it's funny because this is something that I learned that I think is a very important part, and that is that my vision and my dream of what I thought my real estate company would be is so far off from what I originally thought it would be, right? At the beginning, I was so gung ho Airbnb, and I don't know if you remember, but like all of my marketing, my personal
It
brand,
was
I
all
was
Airbnb.
exactly, I was telling people, hey, I'm the Airbnb guy, right?
Yeah.
And fast forward to now, like Airbnb management is literally just a leg and a cog in the entire wheel, right? And
Yep.
what I now tell people, and what I am more accurately defined as, is I am a real estate investment company that focuses on short-term and mid-term rental investments, right?
Hmm.
And that is a much better niche that has a lot more, not just short-term but long-term benefits. But I didn't think of that at first. Like that wasn't like, I get asked all the time, like especially people that interview me and ask me about the details of my business and how there's now 4 verticals. There's 40 people plus that work for me. They're always like, how'd you, like, dude, this is genius. And I was like, I'll be honest, I am not nearly this smart. But I just took one step and another and another, and then I look back and I'm like, holy crap, right? And
Yeah.
that's the story of Elk Ridge Management. It was property management, and really it was actually arbitrage. It was arbitrage Airbnb
Yeah.
and property management. Creative finance came into play, and now we have this whole beautiful investment company. So that's kind of
I've
been the story and flow of it.
I've said before, business is about 75% grit, determination, and work ethic, and 25% just BS. You go with the flow, and you roll with the punches, and you
Uh,
make it up as you go. Like that's real.
yeah.
There's no secret formula. You work hard and you figure it out. That's really what entrepreneurship is. Am I wrong?
Well, that is the most accurate term I've ever heard. And that's, where people get lost in analysis paralysis is not understanding that. Not
Yeah.
understanding that you only need to really understand 70% of it to take the next step. You'll
Hmm.
figure out the rest. And so
I
that's
think
well said.
one thing that I struggled with early on was I do have a people pleasing mantra. Like I want people to be happy, and I know you and I have had several different conversations about your own accounts and things that we need to do better to help you guys have more visibility, and that internally for me kind of irks me because I do have some people like I want people to be happy, and I want them to know that I care about them and that we're doing a
Yeah.
good job. But I've had to learn over time that I can't be perfect at everything. Out of 5 people, 1 or 2 might get upset, or 1 or 2, might not get the TLC that they absolutely need and deserve. When I throw 5 darts at a dartboard, 3 of them are probably going to stick. But what I've learned is I've had to implement or hire other people to help with those other 2 darts get to the dartboard. That's kind of what I've had to learn. And like you said, I think people get so caught up and they get so tight-wadded about, hey, my marketing has to be perfect. I have to have a business plan before I start. I talked to one guy yesterday. He's like, I've got to start my LLC before I start doing deals. And I was like, dude, start doing deals. Like, how do you know
Yeah.
you're going to even make money or you're even going to want to do it if
Yeah.
you don't start? Just go, just
Yeah.
do it. Just go. That's kind of I
So
agree
many,
100%.
no, and that's so well said because there's just so many entrepreneurs in the entrepreneurship space, and really, it's action taking couldn't be more undervalued in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. Like just having the balls to do something, man. Because I look back at the beginning of my business and like I didn't have anything, and like that was a blessing that I think that I was kind of born with. Was just like I come from humble beginnings, so like I figured out that like I know what makes me happy. Like I've told
Yeah.
myself and I told my wife this a million times. If if all I had was my girls, my son, my wife, my family, and I lived in a studio apartment, I'd be happy. Like that. Like
Yeah.
I've found a way that I think I would be happy there. And so like that having that mindset has been extremely valuable in business because then at that point, what is risk, right? Like if I lose it
Yeah.
all, I still have what I really care about. And it's led to me being very actionable. Like I
Hmm.
just send it, right? And I'm not gonna say it's always worked out, but more often than not, it's worked out.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it
Yeah,
doesn't work
exactly.
out.
Sometimes it gets you, but if you just
Mm,
keep going, like you won't lose.
yeah.
And
I want
so
to take I want to take what you just said about I could live in a studio apartment with my wife, my three kids, and I'd still be happy. And I want to take that. Is that something that you were? Now again, culturally, that's something that like just culturally you were blessed with, right? That like coming from a Polynesian family, culturally that they are very good at delivering upon happiness, no matter where they're at, who they're with, or what circumstances they find themselves in, and that's something that I do admire. But how has that helped you to get to some of the circles that you and I together in some instances have been a part of, and how has that driven you to where you're at right now?
really good question. What I've learned in life is that there's this distinct difference between happiness and contentment. And you can be happy while not being fully content, right?
Yeah,
And you can be content but just absolutely not happy, right? And so like that what I attribute my culture, my upbringing to, what it taught me was how to be very very happy, right? Like
no
understanding
matter
where you're
what.
happy for, yep, and the why you do things, the issues and what I saw that I never wanted to be a part of in terms of mindset in my community specifically is the contentment. Like Polynesians are the most content people. And it can be a blessing and a curse. For me, I was never in, I attribute that to my dad and to my grandpa. My grandpa actually, he lived on the islands of Tonga for, 5, 6 years before he moved here with my family, or excuse me, here in America. He worked here by himself for 5, 6 years before he brought the rest. And
Mm,
so that mindset of always like we came here for a purpose, we came here to progress, to not be content. But I was always taught that the only reason we do that is because of our family, is to serve, right? To have higher
yeah,
capacities, to be a better father, be a better brother, sister, right? And so that's kind of where my mindset has always been, and it's served me extremely well. And I haven't realized this until now that I've gotten to this place that like I look back on like some of the decisions I made in building this company, and I tell certain people that are learned in business, and they're like, "Oh, you got big balls, bro." And I'm like, really? Because it didn't feel like that. I was just sending it because at the very least, I was like, at the very least, like, I'm happy. Like at
yeah,
the very least, I lose it all, and sure, I won't be content being in a studio apartment, but I'd be happy.
sure.
And so that's kind of the mindset that I've developed over time, and it's just served me well. So
That's we were I'm the oldest of six boys, and we were at our family cabin for Christmas over the holidays. And over the holidays, all the college football games are going on. You got a bunch of professional teams playing, and my brothers are so intent on watching all of these games. Well, come to find out, they'd started to bet on some of these games, right? And that drove my mom up the wall. She absolutely hated it. And my dad, like, one brother's playing on house money at this point, so he doesn't really care. One brother is like, he's getting close to the point of playing on house money. So my dad just didn't care, right? But my mom was so irked, and afterwards my dad and I had to go into town to get some stuff, and we were laughing about the fact that my mom, when my mom talks to us in like a stern way, we call it her hot breath. And we were laughing about how my mom was giving two of my brothers a hot breath, a senior, and then one of my brothers who just got back from a church mission, the hot breath, right?
Yeah.
And we were laughing about it. And I turned to my dad and I said, Dad, you have to understand that, like, I do a lot of betting too. And I think he kind of startled him, and he was like, what? And I go, I don't bet on teams, or I don't bet on horses. I bet on myself. Like,
Yeah.
Dad, this is how much I've paid in the last year to, for coaches, for investments, for business, business ventures. And my dad was like, well, I don't think that's the same thing. And I said, it is. It's not. I've lost my shorts on a couple things. Some things have turned out really good, but for me, that, like, it excites me. It gets me going. Yep. It's an adrenaline rush. And I think I can attribute part of that to the competitive sports background that I come from. And I would probably say that part of that is in yourself as well. But you talked about that kind of upbringing, and I would say, I'm extremely happy with where I'm at. I couldn't be happier, but by no means am I willing to slow down, because I know what I think I can accomplish.
Yeah, dude, that's powerful. That's powerful. No, and people don't realize that is, whether people say it or not, like, betting on yourself is very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to do. And in today's world, where people are content with a 9 to 5, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Where people are doing a 9 to 5 working for the man and things of that nature, what why they like that is because there is a safety in it where there is no risk, right?
Yeah.
There is no risk, and there's, you know what you're going to get paid. But when you are an entrepreneur and you're a businessman, like, it's a whole different game, and you have to get very comfortable at taking risks, calculated risks, right? Sometimes not nearly as calculated as they should be, but at least the risks that are going to hopefully develop into something, and a lot of it is always yourself. That's well said. That's powerful. So
that's good. So we kind of took a tangent here on some really cool stuff, but I want to go back into real estate just a little bit. Now, for those of you guys who are listening, I want you to understand why Hailame has said that real estate is one of the best investments, which I wholeheartedly agree, right? I'm a real estate investor myself. We've owned properties. I have lots of clients that invest into real estate. Real estate is probably one of, if not the only investment where you should never have to pay a tax. Okay. Currently, you're able to depreciate properties, which means that you shouldn't have to pay taxes on the rental income you receive. When you sell a property, you can 1031 that investment property into a new property and roll the gains over so that you don't have to pay capital gains tax. And then right now, the way the tax law is written is that you can get to a point where when you pass away, when you die, your beneficiaries can receive that real estate with a stepped up basis to whatever the fair market value is, which, again, like I said, then they could turn around and sell that without having to pay any taxes. So that's huge, right? Why do people come to you, or why should people go to you to invest their money into real estate?
Really good question. So what I've learned in real estate, just over the course of the last year, is that the greatest benefit of real estate also happens to be its greatest curse, and that is that there's a million ways to make millions of dollars in real estate. It's just all over the place. Like, there's like, and that's, you find a lot of people that get held up in analysis paralysis because they're just it's overbearing. When they decide I want to get into real estate, it's like, where do I start, right?
You can go short term, long term, you can go mid term, you can go multifamily, you can go apartments, you can go single family. The options are endless.
Exactly. And it's all over the place, right? I can't say I did this on purpose, but what I built my company around was a very niche, very specific space of short-term rentals. Most people know it as Airbnb, even though that's just a platform. It's not an industry, but it's the
Sure.
short-term rental space, right? That's what I am an expert on, and that's what I have built the beginnings of my company on, was understanding how to turn a single family residence specifically into a short-term rental that produces income, generates significantly more income than a traditional long-term rental, right?
Yeah.
And that's what our company does. Now, coupled with that, and it kind of goes further down in the niche, is now I have also figured out how to acquire properties different than traditional financing. Traditional financing, you have to go get a mortgage. They check your credit. You have to have 2 years of verification. Usually, if it's an investment, i.e., a short-term rental, Airbnb, you have to put 20% down, so it requires a lot of money.
Yeah.
I have figured out essentially, and I should say, not say figure out, but I've educated myself on creative finance, which is a way of acquisition that allows me to basically purchase the property directly from the seller. And a lot of people don't know this, but like in a traditional mortgage, that document is essentially the exact same document that as a seller finance deal. The only difference is the lender is now the seller. Now, instead of taking a lump sum out from a mortgage from a bank and taking huge on debt, you're just paying the balance owed to the seller directly instead of the bank that you have a balance on, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the niche that there's tons of benefits to it, right? Because significantly less money down. All the properties we purchased last month were sub 10%. I think most of them were sub 8% down. All of them had the nice thing about the beauty of creative finance is you're not subject to the market interest rate. And
Yep.
so all of them were sub 5%. I think I had one that was 5%. And then on top of that, because the exit strategy and what I know how to do is short term rentals, we cash flow significantly well. And we've won back a lot of cash flow because of the interest rate and because of how we've negotiated the seller finance deal, the creative finance deal. Right. And so that is essentially my niche, and what I am good at is I will help anybody that wants to do anything in the short-term rental game, and whatever place you're at, whether it's just an idea, you have money, but you don't know where to buy, or you have a long-term rental, you want to convert it, or you have an Airbnb already, you just hate managing it or aren't getting the returns you want. I've just expanded my funnel in that space to where I can take anybody and help anybody along that vertical. Right. And
Okay.
so that's
And I will agree. Most of my clients who do short-term rentals cash flow more than a long-term rental. There's just more opportunity to make more money. That being said, talk to me about what some of the downfalls of short-term rentals are. What
yeah.
are some of those potential pitfalls that people who want to get into real estate should be aware of just focusing solely on short-term rentals?
Really good question. I like to compare the STR space. I heard this one time and it was extremely accurate. I like to compare it to skiing, right? You could know absolutely nothing about skiing. It can be your first time skiing and you could still make it down to the end of the hill, right?
Yeah.
But depending on your experience, depending on your systems, depending on what you know, right? That how that journey looks, and it changes depending on who you are, right?
Yeah.
You're either going to take 5 hours to get bottom of the hill, or it's going to take you 30 minutes. You're either going to come down unscathed, or you're going to have a broken arm, broken ribs, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing in the short term rental space. Short term rentals, okay, although they produce significantly, and this is a fact, significantly more profit than long-term rentals, they are 100 to 1,000 times more work, right?
Yeah.
And you can know nothing and jump into it and still make money. A lot of people have been doing that, especially the last 3 years, because it's
Yeah.
never been better, right? And you can still make money, you can still profit, even if it's just a little bit. But if you really understand how to play the game, you understand that there's an SEO, that there's an algorithm, that there's multiple platforms, that there's systems and processes that push down your push down your expenses, increase your profitability. When you understand those things, that's when you can really kind of push the margin on profitability in short-term rentals, right? And so that's essentially where I've managed to create a business around, is just doing that very well. So
Meaning manage those properties for
correct.
other people so that they
That
don't have to worry about that.
correct. Yep.
So what sets? I know, like we've been in a couple of different rooms with other people who also Airbnbs. We have some really good friends, other clients of mine who manage Airbnb properties. What sets Elk Ridge Management apart from these other companies from a management perspective with short-term, mid-term rentals?
Yeah, I'd say our biggest competitive advantage is that we know the Utah market really well. And just knowing your market, knowing your avatar, knowing how to serve that avatar is huge. It gives you a big leg up on just, and there's softwares that'll tell you seasonality of things, but when you have a local ear to the ground, like you can really go in and make some pricing adjustments on different times
Mm.
of the year season that really, really push the margin. So that's one. Like we know this market very well and we know how to adjust accordingly. The second is we have a piece of it's a vertical that we've integrated um, on the design piece, and that's huge. That's big. I don't know many management companies that actually will like design the property, right? And we do this not just for like properties we get that it's completely empty, but also people that approach us and they're like, "Hey, I already have an Airbnb. Cool. I'm gonna send Josie and Camilla, and then we're gonna do a walkthrough." And then I'm going to give you suggestions on what you need to add or take away in the design piece. And we do that in house. It's a vertical that we own. We take profit from if they don't want to do it. Or the alternative is we just tell them, look, you're not our client, because people don't understand how gone are the days in Airbnb where you could just list it and make money. Like those days are gone. Like you have
Yeah.
to be competitive in a lot of different ways. And it's not just in the back end of the intangibles of dynamic pricing, calendar management, all of these things, but it's also on the front end of like, and it's not just pictures and stuff like that. It's like how many beds considering the avatar, right? In Utah County
Mm.
specifically, our avatar predominantly is families, right? So
Yeah.
you're actually going to spend a lot, like, and people don't realize this. Like, I I would stray away from like 1 to 2 bedrooms in Utah, even though they cost less money. It's less overhead, less debt service,
Can't fit as
but
many people in there.
exactly the profitability. My avatar there isn't nearly as consistent or as frequent as a family, right?
Mm.
And so, how I design it, how many beds, the amenities, right? All of our Utah County properties have baby gates and they have pack and plays, right? Like that,
Mm.
that is serving very specifically to a specific avatar. And when I started to understand this in the marketplace, I wanted to own that vertical because it was an opportunity. It was a problem of like, okay, I would tell these people, hey, these are the trends we're seeing. This would help a lot with profitability. And then the next question they'd be is like, okay, well, do I need to do it or can you do it? Or is there a company that
Oh,
who would you
yeah.
recommend? So we kind of just integrated that to where it's like, cool, I'm gonna go take a designer. Shout out to Camilla Simonson. She's a day one. Like she's awesome. And she has about 7 designers under her. And we've stayed really busy. That's been a vertical that's been
Cool.
really it's taught us really well. But I'd say those are kind of some of the very specific competitive advantages that Elk Ridge Management has. We're very
That's
niche on serving. So
cool. I can kind of see, like you talked early on, how you reverse engineered your business. You started with arbitrage. Now, for listeners who might not know what arbitrage is essentially renting a piece of property and then subletting that to other individuals, or in some cases, renting a property and then doing an Airbnb out of that property, obviously with the owner's permission. So it's a great way to make a little bit of money. And then you've transitioned as well into creative finance. The easiest way that I've ever heard someone explain what creative finance is, and this is, I'll shout out Pace Morby here because this is how I learned about what creative finance is say you went to the store, bought your groceries on your credit card, you now owe that credit card company, that they would have the note for what you need to pay them for those groceries, but you then gave those groceries to your neighbor, and your neighbor said that they were going to pay you for those groceries, right? You're just transferring the asset to another individual while still carrying that note and paying that note off. So sub 2 or creative financing is a fantastic way to be able to acquire real estate. talk me through how someone who might want to get into real estate can take advantage of creative financing, either on their own or, again, pushing them to Elk Ridge Management and contacting you to be able to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So the beauty about creative finance is it's it's less there's less barriers to entry, right? In traditional finance, traditional real estate, usually you have to have your real estate license, you have to have your broker's license, right? In creative
Sure.
finance, you don't, right? Those things don't. There's it's just less regulated in those terms, and so you can
Yeah.
really kind of insert yourself in different ways, right? Like I know a lot of people that will just bring me deals. They'll just bring me deals, and if it's a good deal, if it's makes sense, like I will literally buy that deal from them while also buying the property, right? And so
Okay.
there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of fit yourself in the middle. But I think I'd say more than anything, because of how good the market has been for as long as it's been, there's just a gross ignorance on the topic as a whole, right? Like
People have
the
gotten lazy.
oh yeah, way
Yeah.
lazy, and it's frustrating because what ends up happening is, as I'm, talking to these motivated sellers, as I'm solving a lot of these sellers' problems that are hurting financially or what have you, I just have a lot of pushback from real estate agents, brokers, all these people, loan officers, and these are all people that have been, they say they're experts in the space. They've
They
been
should
doing it
they
for
should know what they're talking about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is that they're just so close-minded because it's been so easy for so long that when creative finance is a valid means, been around for 50 plus years, it's completely
Sure.
legal. Like when that valid, you know, offer comes in, what people don't understand, they fear, and what they fear, they doubt, right? And
Yeah.
that's what ends up happening. And then I end up having to fight. It's funny because I bought this West Valley property, okay, from a friend of mine. I knew she was selling it. It was been on the market, it wasn't moving. So I went in and did a creative offer. I had talked to her and her husband directly, and then there was a separate agent that they were working with that later came in. And I actually, when I found out about him, I was like, "Hey, let's cut him in." Hey, that's something that you guys have to
He'll get a commission for selling the
exactly.
property. Yeah.
Exactly. Similar to like a normal deal. Like you guys just need to work that out. And I was totally for it and for him. And what people don't know is when you do creative finance, even though they're under contract on the MLS on that property, it doesn't apply. You don't have to use the real
Hmm.
estate agent regardless if he's under contract or not. A lot of people don't know that. But anyways, they were.
And
And
is that state specific or is that anywhere?
no, that's as far as I know in Utah, that's the case. But
Okay.
that's a really good question. I don't know outside of that, just because I mostly work with sellers. But I found out through this experience that you actually, even though they were under contract, there was no legal obligations.
They do not have to use the real estate agent in that case.
Correct, correct. But there was
Okay.
a relationship there. Also, I hang my hat on who I am and how I do business, and so
Sure.
I was like, hey, you know, just know, just pay him as a normal commission, right? And typically it comes out of the buyers anyway. That's your agent, right? Or it's the
Yeah.
sellers. Excuse me. And so, anyways, long story short, I had gotten them to a place where we felt comfortable, and they were sold, and then I told them to go talk to the agent. Long story short, the agent then reached back out to me and basically more or less told me that they were out because it was illegal. Because
Oh, I remember this scenario.
yeah, and he basically just scared the hell out of them, and it was really frustrating. And at that point, I was just like, "Hey, I'm done. I'm walking." And fast forward today, I now own the house, and I bought it from them because they ended up coming back to me, and they decided to not use the real estate agent, right? It's sad because this agent has no idea that he just talked himself out of a commission, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, but as a real estate agent, he basically is breaching his fiduciary like duties to serve his client. And I don't blame him because it's like you just don't know, right? Like he just didn't understand and wasn't learned. And so this all comes back to the question that you asked, like anybody who's just educating themselves on creative finance today, like you are ahead of the game. Like it
Yeah.
is just knowing how to do it, knowing how to execute on it. That alone is very, very valuable today. And I don't think it will be, in the next, couple years. I mean, I even think the opportunity, we talked about this. I think the
Yeah.
opportunity in real estate for creative deals really is only going to be short lived. I think this year is going to be the best year for it, but there's still tons of ignorance in the marketplace about it, a lot of fear, which honestly, to me, as a creative investor, it's, I mean, it's in my favor, right? Because not many people are doing it.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't, and to kind of clarify what you said, I don't think the opportunity won't be there, but when you take into consideration what interest rates might do, depending on what the Feds do, that those changes might make, the grounds for getting creative financing versus conventional lending a little bit more equal. Whereas the past couple of years, I would say it has been very much so more geared towards creative financing, right? And creative financing will still have its place because of the fact that investors don't have to take 20% of the table. They don't have to pay lender and title fees. You'll still have to pay title fees, but lender fees and commissions and things like that. So it will still be a viable option. I just think interest rates might even the playing field. Am I fair? Is that
absolutely.
fair? Is
That's
that a fair
exactly
assumption?
it, right? It's like, why, as a seller, like, why would you do a seller finance agreement when you can
Yeah.
go to market and it's a bidding war? It's a bidding
Yeah.
war. You're getting more than what you asked for. There's 5 or 6 people that could buy today. That gone are those days now, right? And so now people
Yeah.
are left to, crap, this is sitting, I can't afford it. What's my options, right?
Yeah.
Hence
No, it's
enter creative finance. So to your point, as the market interest rates get more affordable, it's going to equal the playing field. So creative finance at its peak right now, I think the greatest opportunity is right now. So
and if the feds can't pull their head out of their arses, it just makes your job a lot easier. Yeah, they
exactly.
like, and then you keep closing more deals, creative financing. So it was kind of interesting. You highlighted on the fact that you think people have kind of gotten lazy over the last little bit, or some people are ignorant due to what the market has done. I'm going to add into that I also believe that a lot of investors have gotten lazy over the course of the past couple of years due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the tax law that was presented by the Trump administration, because as we all are aware, that allowed individuals to claim bonus depreciation of 100%. And you and I have had several different conversations about this regarding different investors and questions that they come to you with. But now that depreciation steps down to 80%. Next year goes to 60% and then 50% unless there are any changes to the tax laws. And I was in a tax training back in November of 2022, and we talked about this, and we said it's not that investing becomes any more difficult or the benefits are, well, they are less, but that you don't still get benefits for them. It's just that now we have to become a little bit more educated. We have to do a little bit better calculation. We might have to be a little bit more aggressive in that investing. And the reason why I mentioned that is because, like we said earlier, Lami, you closed 16 or 18 deals in the month of December, and that kind of sparked me to make a bet with you going into January, where I said, hey, I will bet you a steak dinner with our wives that
Oh,
you can't close. What did we say? More than 15? Did I say 15 deals?
yeah, it was something like that.
It was
Yeah,
15 deals. I
15.
said, I'll bet you a steak dinner that you can't close more than 15 deals. And Lame's coming off of a December where he was high and mighty. He had done what a
Oh,
lot of
for
investors
sure.
can't do. And, and tell everyone why you're going to be paying for my steak dinner here in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks.
I just couldn't do it. We underestimate the power of Uncle Sam, bro, in December. But you're speaking to a real player, right? It's like, there was a lot of people that did understand that from 2022 to 2023, you lose 20% on the depreciation,
Yeah,
right? And so people were gassing me so that we could deploy and take advantage of
100%,
it.
100%, 100%. I want it all.
Yep. Yep. And so And so we're seeing now that in January it's dying down, but that also speaks to human nature of procrastination. But yeah, so that's and it's funny because it's helped me understand moving forward uh, where to take better bets. So,
I figured
Uh,
for me it was a win-win. Either you'd be paying for my steak dinner, or you'd close that many deals, and we would just increase your billing so that it would pay for itself. That's what I kind of figured out, anyways, as a
can't
client. So
lose, man.
there we go, right? And again, I take very calculated risks. No, to your point, and we struggle with this as well with some of our clients, which is why last year we went through a major overhaul with how we work with clients. But a lot of people wait until end of quarter three, beginning of quarter four to do planning and talk with their, I'll call them their team, whether that's an accountant or a legal advisor or an investment advisor, to figure out what they need to do before the end of the year. But what I've seen is waiting until quarter four to do any planning greatly inhibits your ability to do effective planning. And to your point, now we no longer have a 100% bonus depreciation. We're at an 80% bonus depreciation. And so my suggestion would be for more people to take up planning opportunities with their advisors. If you're a client of ours under certain engagements, you know that you get quarterly planning, but take those opportunities early in the year. File your tax returns and then take the opportunity to plan early in the year so that you have more time to make effective decisions and still get the same tax outcomes or potentially even better tax outcomes.
Absolutely. And it affects everybody involved, right? So not just them, but also, oh, excuse me, but also, any real estate investor that you're working with, it gives them time to be able to, kind of create and find the best deals, right?
Yeah.
Not that any of our deals in December were terrible. They weren't. We had thresholds, certain things in place, but imagine if we knew going into this year that we need to find, all these properties and for the next 11 months, I have enough time to go negotiate, to go find all these things. And so, really it just comes down to you put yourself in a better position and everybody you work with when you have that time, right? And you've planned ahead. So
Cool.
100% agree.
No, very good. Tell us what some of your kind of goals, ambitions, or where you'd like to see your company be in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months. What are some of the things that you guys have that you're working on right now?
Yeah, really good question. So so when I entered the space, I kind of vertically integrated, not intentionally from the beginning, but now we're being very intentional with it. So for example, kind of what I talked about, the design piece, we kind of not only with the design, but now we have the cleaning, we have the maintenance. So all of that is essentially in house. We're now expanding the industry. So essentially, we have about now 20 cars that we now Turo. Well, if people
Oh,
don't know
cool.
what Turo is essentially, basically an Airbnb for cars, right?
Yeah.
And we've been arbitraging because and again, it's just being aware of your market. Car market's tanked, right? And it's continued tanking. So we have a lot of people that are underneath on their car. They owe more than what it's worth. And so we've managed to essentially leverage our eyes with Airbnb. And as soon as somebody books with us, they get a note, they get a notification says, "Hey, we have Turos as well. You get 10% off." And we have 20 cars and we can't keep them off on the lot. Like they're just constantly booked. And so
Cool.
we're kind of expanding into the travel industry. So we're doing that. We got in the works something that we're going to actually pick up people from the airport and drop them off personally to their Airbnbs. And so it's just kind of really just taking advantage of all of the money that's being spent from that client that's already coming to stay at your property. Right.
Elevating the experience and capitalizing on that elevation.
Yep. Yep. And
Very
so
neat.
So those are some of our goals as we're expanding industry wide in the service space, travel service space, and then and really it's just kind of taking advantage of the real estate market as it is. My personal goals is I'd like to have 50 more doors owned this year and do 10 mil. So that's kind of the
Cool.
goals. Yeah, so that's where we're
Well,
at, bro.
I'd after your first bet, I don't know if you'd want to make a second bet, but if you do, I'd be happy to make that offline, especially because I know the trajectory of the first bet. So that would be fantastic.
We'll wait till December before I make any more
We'll see.
bets.
I like it. Where can people find you? How can people get a hold of you? How do you prefer to work with people? What is kind of your, if you're talking to an audience and you were to tell people what your perfect partner would look like, or who you want to work with, what would that look like? And how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we've been working a lot with, we love investors. So people that already have multiple properties, people that have disposable income that they're trying to get off, especially if you're trying to offset incomes. Those are our ideal, but really anybody that's in the STR space, whether you want to buy one, you have one that you don't want to manage, or you have long-term rental you want to switch, we'd love to chat with you. You can find us on Instagram primarily. So Hailame K is my personal one, HAILAMEK. And then on there, you'll find my company, Elk Ridge MGMT. And we have a website as well as my number. But phone number is 801-623-0116. But those are all the forms you can communicate with us. And yeah, we'd love to help anybody that's there.
Cool. Coming from my own personal experience, again, like I said, it's been a lot easier for clients to become friends and friends to become clients, and I consider you a good friend. So it's been fun to kind of see your progression, and it's been fun to kind of hash things out today. I learned a couple things about you that I didn't know, and hopefully some of the listeners will have gotten a couple things that they can start to implement and get creative on. Again, this has been an awesome experience. Thank you, Lame. I hope you've been able to see really quickly that here on Slackin' Off, we do everything but slack off. Thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to Slackin' Off with Brady Slack.